Welcome to the AMM podcast. I'm Andrew Michael Meador, and we're wrapping up season 1 with episode 10 today. And my esteemed guest is Katy Richardson.
Hi, I am a graduate student at the Seattle School, getting my master's in counseling psychology. I've grown up evangelical or evangelical adjacent my whole life, and I still identify as a Christian, but I don't identify as evangelical, and that is what I want to say about me.
Great.
Yeah.
Would you say that you like the term ex-evangelical to describe yourself?
I don't like to describe myself as what I'm not. So I don't. Ex-evangelical, I think, makes a lot of sense in that transitional period when you're deconstructing. But I'm not deconstructing anymore. I'm very comfortable with the term Christian. If we want to get like niche specific with what I believe about the Christ, it's that I'm a mystic Trinitarian. But I'm a Christian. That works for me. It's fine.
All right. So the premise today is, have we gone too far? So, Katy, have we gone too far with protein candy?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't understand why people want sweet protein things in general. Like, why? Like, when they came out with protein chips, I was like, this makes sense to me. But I don't ever want to eat like a sickly sweet anything after working out. So I'm going to say for sure, yes, we've gone too far in general with sweet protein things.
All right. So I'm kind of on the fence about it because I've started working out in the last year. And so I'm very conscious about my protein intake and what I'm putting in my body to make sure I'm nurturing my muscle development and growth. And I walk into like a GNC and I see protein cookies and protein candy. And I'm like, this is what's wrong with America. We've got to put protein in candy to get people to eat protein.
Right.
And I don't necessarily think that's the presupposition that started the product, but maybe it's like, oh, well, if you're working out, you want to treat, but maybe you don't want to go like off the deep end with high fructose corn syrup or a Milky Way or Snickers bar or something like that. So protein candy, it's a way for you to feel good about yourself and increase your protein intake.
Yeah. I guess, I work at a bakery and I'm surrounded by sweet treats all the time. And in my estimation, it's like, just buy the pastry and eat the sweet thing and then go make an egg. Like it's fine. Eat the real food. It's okay. Because I can eat maybe half a Danish, like I can't even eat a whole Danish. And if you just eat the thing that tastes good, then you can get your protein from something else and you don't have to do this weird double duty thing that is gross processed food, but then also it's not going to satisfy you just like how a Danish would. So just eat the Danish. Go buy the candy bar. So
protein biscuits is what I hear you saying.
Yes, that's what you hear me saying. Or just protein. I'm a vegetarian, so I get asked all the time, like, well, where do you get your protein? And it's like all the food. It's there. Just I'm fine with protein. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, I get protein in my candy and my waffles.
Exactly. Yeah, in my candy and my lollipops, which is like all I eat. So it's like the opposite. I don't have a sweet tooth at all. I'm mostly a savory person.
All right, Katy, have we gone too far with modern medicine?
People are still sick, so probably not too far. I think that there's still treatment that we can develop. Have we gone too far with prescribing things prematurely with people and people being dependent on medicine? Yes. Have we gone too far with the pharmacy as an industry that is for profit? 100%. but there's still diseases that need to be cured. So I don't think we've gone too far with modern medicine.
Okay. And leading into this next one, so it's building off of it, have we gone too far with be fruitful and multiply?
Yes, I think we have. No, I honestly, I don't know. I do know that the idea of overpopulation is a myth, and it's often used to shame people of color more than it is anything else. So that's be fruitful and multiply as this idea that we are overpopulating the earth and that's a problem. Yes, I think that's not it. But I do think that there is a lot of pressure for people to have kids who don't want to have kids because of that concept of be fruitful and multiply. And I think it's okay if you don't want to have kids. I'm not sure I want to have kids. So there you go. Those are my 2 thoughts on that.
Okay, so for anyone listening that maybe they don't have as deep, I don't know how to say it, maybe racial or cultural understanding of those things. So what you said at the beginning about, it sounded like you were speaking to some sort of racism.
Yeah.
Could you explain that just a little bit more?
Yeah, so there's this idea, especially when we're talking about like climate change or overusing our resources, that that there's just too many people on the planet, that there's too many people on the planet and that's the problem. That's not the problem. We have more than enough to care for every person on the planet, that we have enough resources. We just can't live the way that we are living currently. Often that idea of overpopulation is used to shame people of color who typically have larger families, or typically have more kids than a white family that typically has like the 2.5 kids. So that's kind of where that's coming from.
Okay. So now, Katie.
Yeah.
Have we gone too far with fishing and hunting?
I believe that ethical hunting is the best way to eat meat if you're going to be a meat eating person. It often leads to conservation of lands. Like I lived in Montana for 2.5 years, and like the hunters are the biggest land conservation advocates you'll ever find, because they want to make sure that the herds are preserved, because they want to be able to hunt elk and deer, and they actually and antelope, and they actually use that meat to feed their family and the people in their community. So I think that we should probably have more hunters like that. I don't understand. I think we've gone too far with the idea of like big game hunting, or hunting that's not involved, where there's like no meat consumption involved. It's just about like the trophy. And that's pretty disgusting to me. And then as far as fishing goes, it's kind of gross. But other than that, I'm fine with fishing. So I don't think we've gone too far.
Okay. Have we gone too far with plastic surgery?
I feel 2 ways about this. I believe that there is something to be said for being an embodied person and being really comfortable with who you are in your body, whatever that looks like. But I also think that people have a right to do what they want to do with their bodies, and they have that freedom of choice. And if they want to do a lot of plastic surgery, then that's 100% their choice. And then I have all kinds of questions. I mean, plastic surgery is used a lot of times with people who have some kind of like body dysmorphia in relation to like, trans youth, and not trans youth, but like trans adults who are making those kinds of decisions. And I'm all for plastic surgery in that regard. So have we gone too far with plastic surgery? Yes, if it's not about knowing who you are and wanting to be how you see yourself. So if it's just about like adhering to an external societal expectation, 100%. If it's within yourself that you're not feeling right in your body. Plastic surgery, I don't think we've gone too far. I think we've helped a lot of people, actually.
Okay. So yeah, I would say helpful in terms of things like cleft palate, maybe other physical or what might be considered cosmetic conditions that can have far-reaching effects later on in life that would need to be fixed early on. For me personally, I'm never going to get calf implants or butt implants.
Right.
But like, what if I want to get a couple of knobs on my forehead?
I mean, I have a full sleeve of tattoos. So if you want to get a couple knobs on your forehead, okay. If that's something that you want to do, I mean, I don't get it, but it's not my body. It's yours. And if that feels right for you to have those knobs on your forehead, I'm all for it.
So, quick side note, just because I'm curious to know what you think about this. The things that happen to our bodies now, if you believe in any sort of resurrection, are those things permanently stamped upon us? Like, if you lose a toe, is that permanently lost for eternity now? Do you have any thoughts or beliefs on that?
I mean, I don't think I'll have a body. If there's any kind of conscious afterlife, and I'm still Katy in that conscious afterlife, I don't think I'll have a body at all. So I don't think these are going to stay with me.
So are you going to be some sort of conscious ethereal vapor?
Maybe. I think kind of ideally, I'd really like to not be conscious anymore. I'd like to just be fully in the oneness with God after death. That would be like ideal for me. Because Pete Holmes does this whole bit where he talks about like, can you imagine if in heaven I'm like, I'm Pete Holmes, and I can't imagine like being in heaven and being like, I'm Katy Richardson and I was born in Florida. I think it would just be really cool to just, whatever this like separation that is between me and like God, it's gone, and it's just, I'm just part of the oneness when I die. That would be my ideal. So I wouldn't have a body. I would just be one with God. Would be ideal. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how you wouldn't describe yourself as an evangelical after answering that question.
What gave it away?
All right, Katy, this is the last one, and then we're going to get into the main portion of the conversation.
Yeah.
Have we gone too far with electricity?
I'm very grateful for electricity. Have we gone too far with electricity? Probably not, but I do think we need to figure out more ethical ways of getting electricity. So that's my thought on it. If we're going to keep using up natural resources to generate electricity, then we've probably gone too far. But otherwise, I'm pretty grateful for like my refrigerator and this computer and these headphones and everything that powers my life. So yeah, that's the way I feel about that.
Can you go into more depth and qualify what you mean when you say ethical?
Yeah.
Harvesting of electricity.
Yeah, so I don't want to use fossil fuels to harness electricity, and I think that if we can figure out ways to do that, that's not going to deplete our planet of their natural resources. Generating electricity using, solar energy, hydro energy, that kind of thing. I'm cool with electricity if we can be creative with it.
So where it went in my mind were things like the deforestation of the Amazon,
totally,
habitat loss. But then also in my mind, I wasn't sure if you were saying nuclear energy is not ethical.
Oh no, I think nuclear energy is the best use of this horrible thing that we now have, and it's like we can't unknow it, so we might as well generate electricity with it,
But how fascinating would it be if we destroyed all articles and relevance to it in the modern era, and we just buried it and destroyed the knowledge and stopped using it. Do you think there's anything like that that we should bury and like after generations try to forget?
It's so hard to imagine, because the things that I would want to like consider would maybe be like cars. You know, maybe we remove the concept of cars. But so much of what has built who we are now is because of cars, you know? So I don't know if it would even be possible, but I don't know. I've just been thinking a lot. I'm contemplating getting rid of my car, and just thinking a lot about this dependency that we have on this thing that is, I think, probably more harmful than it is good. But how do we, you know, we would have to like also come up with amazing light rail systems, and which sounds awesome, but like it would be this whole thing. But yeah, cars would maybe be the thing that I'd be like, let's just not have that anymore. And like, you know, racism and the patriarchy, but like, those are like big things.
Yeah, throw classism in there too.
Yeah, throw classism in there. We just bury all of that and then move forward. That would be awesome. I don't know how that happens, but we could figure it out.
Man, okay, so we need to record another episode after this about racism, classism.
Yeah, because no one is better to talk about it than two white folks. Lily White, I think, is how they would describe us, Andrew.
And I know you're making a joke, but the Caucasians that care about this, I feel like need to speak to the Caucasians that do not care about this.
100%, 100%. I totally agree with you. It's just funny. We need to have a conversation about racism. Like we do, but it's just funny.
Yeah, I totally get that. The optics would be awful on that.
It's like the whitest people you can imagine. Yeah, super white. It's like a sweater vest, you know?
So here's where I was going with electricity and going too far. So I was a research scientist for 3 years. Then I worked as a chemist in a bottled water company, and I've now started my 11th year as a high school teacher. And some of those jobs, like when I was working at the bottled water company, they had shifts. So I could work first shift, second shift, third shift. And when I've been a teacher, there's been no optional shift. My schedule has been very regimented and mandated. And so my idea is premised around the fact that I'm a night person. Physiologically and biologically, I feel like I do my best work and my body is most naturally alert in the evening. And it feels oppressive to work in a system that makes me wake up early in the morning. I have to try and shut my body down at night so I can get enough sleep to wake up in the mornings. And so my bright idea is we create essentially two societies. One is a society fully comprised of morning people, and morning people have their schools and their gas stations and everything else. And then there's a society of night people, and the night people have their school that they work at, their gas stations, their businesses, etc. So what do you think about that initial idea?
I think you'll probably have more morning people than you will night people.
Okay.
So that I think there will be some disparity.
Is that based on a feeling in your heart, or do you have like data?
Yeah, it's based on just the idea from like the past civilizations and the way that people like woke up with the sun and then fell asleep to the setting of the sun. So I think that there is something probably, I mean, this is all conjecture, but there's like probably something like baked within us that's the way most people function. I think you'll probably have some in-betweeners too, who maybe like in the summertime, they're night people, but then in the wintertime, they're morning people. So I think we need to be comfortable with there being some flexibility within this binary. But I think that that's valid. It's kind of bananas that we have this, we know that people are most productive at about 10 a.m. across the board. Like it's like a thought process. But then by 10 a.m., when I was in high school, I was on my third class of the day. So there are two classes, one of which was AP biology, by the way, like that I did at 8 o'clock in the morning, you know, and I had been awake since 6. That's probably not the best learning environment for most people. So yeah, I think that that's great. I think that we have the current schedule that we have for students and for people because we want everybody to work 9 to 5. And so if we can get kids to be ingrained in that from jump, then it's really easy to transition them into being workers. So yeah, I'm into splitting it. Let's split it. That sounds great.
Okay. So then tying it back to electricity.
Yeah.
And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, have we gone too far, is with energy drinks. So tied into this, electricity was really the first thing that allowed us to operate outside of the natural cycles of the Earth's rotation that we live in, with night, daytime. Some people could argue candles did that, but I'm not so sure.
Right.
Like, I think it could really be pinpointed on electricity. And so there's good and bad with that. One, electricity allows us to perform life-saving operations in hospitals in the middle of the night. But then it also enables the average person to stay up and do things far past maybe what the circadian or circalunar systems and rhythms would permit. So the next question that I want to ask you is, would we be better off, and have we gone too far from living apart from nature and living from that rise and fall of the sun and the moon?
You know, it's interesting. So I live in Seattle now, and electricity is used in homes a lot in the wintertime to have vitamin D lamps, because Seattle doesn't have a lot of sunlight in the wintertime, and so people buy vitamin D lamps because they have seasonal depression. Cool advantage, electricity. Yeah. That's just an aside. Would we be better with a circadian rhythm? I don't know. I don't know, because I've grown up. This is the way that I've grown up. This is. I mean, I left the womb and there was electricity. Do you know what I mean? Like, that was like, I left the womb into a bright light. You know what I mean? So like this idea of ever being able to get back to nature, I don't know if there's like a going back. Maybe there's a reintegration, which I think would be good. But I don't know if there's a going back to nature option. I don't know if that's an option.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean you don't know if that's an option?
I don't know if it would have to be like gradual or over generations, because if we were to just be like, okay, this generation, we are now going to follow a more circadian rhythm with our relationship to nature and to electricity and whatever, I think it would actually really mess with people. I'm concerned about the massive disrupt in the way that people do life currently. It would have to be a gradual generational scaling back, which of course is like the issue with all change, I think, is that most of the time it's gradual and generational, and it's not the kind of change we want to do.
Yeah.
It's not drastic. Now, today we've decided we're going to, everyone is going to actually be in relationship with the sun. What's really fascinating about right now and being in Seattle is we're covered in smoke. So I can't, it looks the same all day. So I'm at the bakery at 6 a.m. So I was there when the sun rose, and then I left, and it was as if it had been 5 p.m. the whole day. Like it didn't, I kept accidentally looking at the sun because I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So I don't know. I mean, we live in a world that has climate fires now too. So I did not have a relationship with time that was connected to the sun yesterday. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It just didn't, it was the same all day. There was no natural rhythm. So.
Mm-hmm. So the way that I would describe it would be societal inertia. It's inertia is a property of matter that resists change in motion. So I'm often frustrated by the inability of society to rapidly accommodate changes. And I feel like that societal inertia would definitely be true in this scenario if we were creating the circadian and the circalunar societies, the morning and the night people. But do you think that those societies could coexist in the same geographical area, or would they have to be geographically distinct?
I think they could benefit from each other if they were in the same location. So I think that there could be coexisting, but we'd have to figure out how to do it without creating classism and segregation, though.
Well, the evening people would obviously be superior.
Oh, got it. Yeah.
That would be the ruling class.
Of course, they would be the ruling class. And there would be like a star-crossed lover situation between, all of that.
I've fallen in love with a morning person. What will Papa say?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think we'd have to figure out a way for it to work where there's mutual respect for the two different things that each society, each of those like sects bring to each other. If we have that baked into the system, then it could be really beneficial for there to be some coexisting. But I think people are probably more complicated than this binary that we've created. So I just don't, it would work as like a framework as long as we can also recognize that there can be like some intermingling as well, I think.
Okay. So let's say that we have this society of people that are living with the natural cycles. So they rise from the sun, they go to bed when it gets dark out. Do you feel like there would be any propensity to rehash gender roles in that society? Do you think that if we went back to that time without electricity, maybe not without electricity, maybe they have electricity, but they're not using it for light bulbs, for light energy. Do you think that would revert back to the times when women would be homesteading and cooking and cleaning, taking care of the children, or maybe walking to get water, while the men would be reserved to hunting or other specific roles?
It's interesting because there's this book, and I can't remember what it's called, but it's about the formation of new technologies and its relationship to women, and how it doesn't, you would think that new technology would make it easier for women to be women, and then they would have like more time to like learn to do, like they would have more time to be like in society as opposed to separate from the home. But that has functionally not been the way that it's worked. So if you go back to like it used to be like women made bread, and it was like bread that was milled by a man, and then we had like these like industrial mills, and the quality of the flour was better, which just made it so that women had to make better bread, and then they had to make cakes. And then there was like egg beaters were invented, and then they had to make angel food cakes, which are like complicated. It's like, it doesn't make women's life easier to have technology, it just makes it more complicated. And if you go back, like, even if we eliminate agrarian society, we go to like what we believe the hunter-gatherer society actually looks like, there was a lot more interdependence between men and women, and equal opportunity with roles. If you have like the hunter and the gatherer, and they're equally as important to developing the food source, then there's more equality in that relationship. And then when we start having this idea that women need to have a lot of babies to keep the farm and tend to the farm, of course it makes sense to keep her in the house, because I don't think I'm answering your question, but of course it's okay to keep her in the house, because like, we need to preserve the baby maker. So how far back are we going, I guess, is my question. Because I think there was a point where things were a little bit more equal, and then it got worse, and it's maybe getting better now. But also sometimes we just want women to be everything. We still hate women. We just want them to be everything. We want them to be successful in business and successful in the home in equal measure.
Man. The question that just popped in my mind was, it feels like the difference in physiology and biology has driven gender roles, right? So women become pregnant, they give birth, so they're not able to work as much as a man. Do you think that we can achieve equality despite those differences in biology? Or would the only way to truly achieve equality would be for men and women both to be able to become pregnant and both be able to give birth?
So there's a company in Portland that's women owned, and she operates on her cycle. So she's very aware that like when she is ovulating, when she's in her luteal phase, that she is way more productive than when she is premenstrual or menstruating. And so she has catered her work schedule to that rhythm, and the women that work with her cater their work schedule to that rhythm, because their rhythm is different. It's not better or worse, it's just different. So much of the way that our society works is based on a male rhythm as opposed to a female rhythm. And I'm being very like, I'm not acknowledging that gender binary is a construct. I'm kind of, this is very generalized. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and I'm aware of that there's a lot of overlap in different things like that. But we do have this 9 to 5 work week works really, really well for men because of the way that their cycle, men are cyclical too, but their cycle is different. And it's not that women can't do it. Women have been molding themselves into a man's world for forever. It's just that doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily the best for us. So I don't think that we need to change anything. I think men are often shocked by what it is that women do and deal with all the time. We were 12. I mean, I was 12 years old. I started my period. And from that moment on, I had to just pretend that once a month there wasn't blood coming out of my vagina, because it's not something that we're allowed to talk about. And I don't have it's natural. I have a pretty good relationship with my period. I'm just saying all of this to say that I think men are way more concerned about what women are capable of than women are, because women are very aware of what we're capable of. It's like we have to do men stuff all the time when there's blood coming out of our vagina. That's just the way that it is. So yeah, I don't think that needs to be. I don't need men to experience my womanliness to understand. I don't need that to equalize me. I just need there to be an acknowledgement that I am just as powerful as a man. There are some things about the physiologically about me that are just different, but they're neither better or worse or less or more. It's just, there's just a difference. And frankly, like, that's the way it is with most people. There's something going on that we don't know about. There's something, I mean, like, there is no perfect person out there. So everybody's dealing with different things. It's just, anyway, that's, I think I'm rambling, but that's what I feel about that.
It's really fascinating to hear about that company near where you are, where she works around. And that sounds like, to try and just put it succinctly instead of hash it out, a privileged position to own a business and to be able to set that culture for your company.
100%, yeah.
So do you think that, like, what would that look like if we took that on a wide scale? Because there are business considerations like answering emails at 8 a.m. to be able to talk to France and China and Japan and all these other companies because of the severe time difference. Do you think that really society embracing that and our natural cycles would inhibit business?
So I'm less concerned about inhibiting business as I am about the enrichment of people's lives, just in general. like, oh no, we're not going to make as much money. I'm a little less concerned about that. But I also think, like, this whole question of, like, the have we gone too far question in general, to me, when we're talking about these kind of like big changes, the question is, like, have we gone too far? Yes, if we just want to make slight changes to the status quo. Have we gone too far if we want to make giant structural change? No, we've not gone far enough at all. You know, it's like, I feel like we stop at, we've made a more civil version of what we already have, or a nicer version of what we already have. If we want to see big change, we've never gone far enough. Yes, I think I agree with that.
So then, how can we take it to that next level? What's our plan?
Oh, I don't have one. I'm sorry to say I don't have one.
Is it political? Is it grassroots? Is it?
I mean, I think it's always going to be grassroots. I'm always going to opt for grassroots over a massive political shift, because I feel like that the political shift is it's like the domino effect from the grassroots movement. And anytime we try and astroturf something, astroturfing is the idea of like large political groups. So like the Koch brothers often astroturf, where they funded the Tea Party. And so the Tea Party created this organization it looked grassroots, but it was actually funded by billionaires. Anytime we astroturf, the results, I mean, no one talks about the Tea Party anymore, and I don't think there are any Tea Party candidates. There are very few Tea Party people left in the Republican Party, frankly. I'm not a Republican. It's like, as an observation, just an outsider observation. When we astroturf things, it dies. So starting with a grassroots movement is the way to bring this kind of thing about. And again, it's not the kind of change we want to see, because it takes time, and it's a lot of nothing and then all at once. It looks like nothing and then all at once, because there's this gradual growth that happens, gradual awareness that happens.
So if we're looking at this, I would call it the prophetic landscape. What's capable in our future? What are the possibilities? Do you think that this sort of change, meaning the change in like us following natural cycles, getting away from having to drink energy drinks in the morning, coffee, Red Bull, any sort of caffeine, do you think that would lessen the disparity between classes and racism and any of these other big issues that have a high societal inertia?
Probably, because I think that any time that we de-standardize our society. Is that a word? De-standardize? Unstandardize? When we remove the standardization from society, I think we end up with better results. When we stop assuming that everybody learns the same way, that everybody, you know, is going to pass the same kind of test. I mean, I'm thinking like in school, obviously, because of like the standardized tests, but the idea that like everyone's going to function the same way just because a lot of people function well in this way. Anytime we do make those kinds of big changes, it's helpful. Anytime we acknowledge that people are different and that people have different needs, it's helpful to the society.
I want to echo that. I think understanding the variety and the diversity is so important. I mean, let alone in education, understanding like there's this big idea that teachers always start off teaching to their learning profile, meaning like an individual teacher has a way that they learn things. And generally, they start teaching through that lens without accommodating different or diverse learning types. And then you grow as a teacher as you break out of that and you see, oh, okay, you know, these are all the different learning types. These are how I can reach my students and help them fulfill their potential. So give us an example of that in society. So outside of the classroom, like how can we hear stories about life that's different than someone else's?
Yeah, so I immediately, when you said that, I started thinking about the disability movement, and the disability, oh gosh, what was it called? The Disabilities Rights Act, where, I mean, like, literally disabled people crawled up stairs in places to help people understand that this concept of like this building with stairs may be great for you, but I can't get to this building because you won't put in ramps. Like just basic things, like you won't put in ramps. So they would literally crawl up the stairs to demonstrate that. Like that was a huge part of that, of what brought that awareness to people's attention. Because if you've got functioning legs, you don't ever think about whether or not a building is accessible. That's not something that you're concerned about at all, accessibility to disabled people. I mean, and then there's of course there's like the lunch counter sit-ins where, you know, black folks sat in white spaces. I mean, we think about that as like, that's just an example of discrimination. It's like that was the point that they were trying to make, is that they're not allowed to sit in. It's shocking to you that they're sitting in these white places. If you're a white person, you maybe have never thought about, even if you're a well-intentioned white person, you maybe have never thought about what it must be like to be excluded from something. Or, I mean, like the AIDS movement in the 80s, when they would do like sick-ins and dead-ins, where they would literally just lie on the ground as if they were dead because they had a death sentence and nobody was doing any research about this massive epidemic that was killing people. So, I mean, I'm just thinking about those kind of like radical moments where people just point out, I mean, those are big examples, but it's just pointing out that like the way that everything functions for everybody else is not working for me. And I'm not alone in that. There are other people who cannot survive this way. Or it's really hard to survive this way.
I think if there were a singular principle outside of selfless love for one another, I think it would be the ability to have a humanizing gaze in the world. You know, in America and many other countries, Caucasian males are the apex of social status. And even with Caucasian females, there's a huge issue and a disconnect between the humanity, the value, and the dignity of a white woman. And then I don't feel like I even need to rationalize the thought that with other races, with minorities, people with disabilities, those with varying cognitive syndromes. You know, I think we could really benefit from humanizing one another and grasping for friendships with people who are diverse and different from us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really true. And there's an element of, so I'm the kind of person who, going back to school, I'm very good at school. I love school. The way that school is set up works so well for me, and it always did. I thrived in that environment. I'm so excited to be back in that environment. I'm good at school, and it's set up in a way that just really works for me. It would be so easy for me to think that and they did, they put me in the gifted program and I took the advanced classes. It's all set up for me to think that I'm somehow superior to other people my age because I was good at school, because the way that learning is done in the classroom works so well for me. I'm not smarter or superior to other people who didn't do as well in school. That's not an indication of that. But the world is set up for me to feel that way because it worked so well for me. Mm-hmm. So if we're gonna be honest about the world, it's set up in such a way that it works better for some people than it does for other people. Going back to, it works better for morning people. It just does. The world functions better for morning people than it does for people who just need a little bit more time to, be on and be ready. It doesn't mean that morning people are better people. It just means that the world works better for them. Mm-hmm. So
there have been several moments where inconveniences have enlightened me. And what I mean is, so I live in Chattanooga, and downtown, there's still a pretty significant homeless population. Mm-hmm. And when I'm driving around downtown, oftentimes I find myself inconvenienced and feeling frustrated when someone who appears to be homeless is wandering across the street while I have a green light. Mm-hmm. That's frustrating, particularly for me, because I don't just go on leisure drives. I'm not driving because I enjoy it. I'm driving to get from A to B in the shortest and safest amount of time possible. And traffic signals flow, and I often get stopped at a light that I could pass if there wasn't someone inhibiting my motion. Mm-hmm. And so my perception is this is a homeless person. And maybe 2 years ago, I stopped getting mad and getting frustrated about that. And instead, I was just glad and grateful that they could cross the street without getting hit.
Yeah.
In a safe way. And I think it takes moments like that, and it takes emotional sobriety to look at situations like that, to grow from it, and to realize, oh, like I don't really see these people as fellow brothers and sisters, as human beings.
Right.
People get reduced to an abiotic inconvenience. There's no humanity to them. And I think that issue in and of itself has wrought so much destruction upon our society.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. It's something that I've noticed too, that if someone who appears homeless would stop to talk to me, I have what I call resting nice face. So it happens fairly often that people like to stop and talk to me. Little do they know I'm not super interested in what they have to say, but it's fine. So like if someone who appears homeless stopped and talked to me, I would be more afraid than if someone who appears not homeless on the street would stop to talk to me. I have equal risk in those situations. It's, the risk is the same depending on who the person is. There's not like, the unhoused are not inherently more violent than we know this. Like, they're not inherently more violent, but I was more afraid because one person is more dehumanized than the other to me, because we dehumanize a group of people more than we do, you know, the guy who looks fairly well dressed and wants to have a conversation with me. I don't want to talk to either one of them, but you get it.
Yeah. So
not interested.
Here's the final question that I want us to end with.
Yeah.
Is it disingenuous to form relationships with people who are obviously different than you for the sake of learning, for the sake of educating yourself?
Yes, that's dehumanizing. Have a relationship with someone who's different with you because you like that person, and have a relationship that way. I think come at it from that perspective. I would say that coming at, here's the difference. If you're going to pay that person, go for it. If you're going to give them money to teach you about themselves, and that's why you have a relationship with them, pay them, because they're providing you with an education. If the goal is to have a relationship with a person, have a relationship with a person, and, you know, and have that be the reason that you're pursuing relationship with them.
Katy, I love talking to you.
I love talking to you.
If people were really struck by the things you said and they wanted some sort of way to keep up with you or to follow you, can you point people in that direction?
Yeah, so I'm limited on social media, but I am on Instagram, Katy Joy Richardson, and that's the best place to follow me. I do a lot of stories and that kind of thing, so that's probably the best way to follow me with information and that kind of thing, at least for right now. I'll let you know if that changes.
All right, thanks, Katy.
Yeah, thanks.